Well, the funny thing is that it took the entire intro for all the platforms to be hooked up.
Oh,
So
there you go.
I'm not going to play. It's just been I stayed up till 6:30. You know how this goes. I mean,
Yeah.
when duty calls, duty calls. So this is my fourth show today, and I'm a little bit dim-witted, but that's okay. It's a pleasure to have you here, Seth, Lyon. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think it's going to get a lot of interest on the live and the replay. But thank you for coming in and sharing space with us and honoring us with your presence.
Thank you. Yeah.
So let's just jump right into this thing. I see Fiona's here. She's been on the show over the years a few times. She's very passionate about your specialty, and that's why we're here. Thank you, Fiona. But can you just kind of give us a kind of a general, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, but also like in general what your passion is, and why you're here today.
Yeah, you betcha. So I'm a somatic trauma specialist. So that means that I help people resolve trauma, specifically at the body level, and even more specifically at the nervous system level. Because what we have found in this body of work, which we call the new traumatology, developed by folks like Peter Levine and Kathy Kane, many others, those are sort of the two key founders, though, of this nervous system approach, is that trauma, though it affects the mind, the body, the soul, relationships, behaviors, thought patterns, everything, it fundamentally is rooted in the autonomic nervous system. And so there's many different approaches to trauma historically, which have been cognitive based, and that's good, but you have to work with the body. You have to work with the nervous system specifically in order to truly resolve this stuff from the ground up. And so that's what my real passion is in terms of the work that I'm doing now. I got into it originally for myself, it started maybe 25 years ago with sort of the classic awakening process that I think a lot of people go through.
Oh, and good.
Being...
I didn't know we were going to bring that into the conversation.
Well,
you were working on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It started with me working on myself. And so I went through, and it's important actually because I went through all sorts of different modalities and approaches, lots of mostly spiritually based, lots of meditation. I've had a daily meditation practice for 25 years. But I didn't really get under the rug, so to speak, of the trauma until I met my wife, who had already done this somatic experiencing training. And she introduced me to the work. I was living in Oregon at the time, and she's Canadian, and she imported me up to Canada, was kind enough to bring me up here. And so I then did the work for myself, and I did the training, and did about 6 years of training in a couple different modalities, and it's been nonstop ever since of doing this work and trying to get it out there.
So I saw this picture, I guess it was a meme, but it was a while back, and it was a picture of if you just took the nervous system out, right? Yeah. And I don't remember what the caption was, but it really struck me because it basically said, this is like, I'm not going to say that it said this is your soul, but it said this is you. Yeah. The rest of it is over here. So this is like the physical part of your true composition. And, and then just reflecting on that with so many things that happened to me, for instance, 150, 200 seizures over 35 years. Wow. And as I went, I haven't had one in several years, but as I reflected on these episodes, I started to understand, this was just from, just the dialogue with the universe, right? Knowing, but I came to understand that I was having, these were like electrical overloads, right? And so I've become much more conscious of that, as a result. This is before I've ever talked to Fiona about this stuff. And I was like, I can feel it. If I stay, a lot of times I'll put my hand up like this just to see.
Uh,
In most 99% of the time, it's perfectly still,
yeah.
but I can feel like electricity, and I'm just cognizant of it.
Yeah.
It's just a reflection. But so you like once you develop this, um, and then you went into, I guess you're a practitioner, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a practitioner now with a private practice in Vancouver. But I also assist my wife, Irene, she was in private practice and then was just sort of feeling I'm not helping enough people this way. And she got the inspiration to take it global. So she's developed all sorts of online resources, programs, all sorts of stuff, for people
Wow,
around the world.
how
So
cool! How cool is that?
it's super cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's like over 4,000 people now that have gone through the program. So over
Well,
70 countries. So it's,
so people talk about, of course, the people use the term twin flame or
yeah,
whatever they want to call it. These partnerships, these new partnerships
yeah,
in what we call the Ascension, and one of the characteristics seems to be a third energy
mm,
created. A lot of time, it's mission oriented. So
sure.
it's interesting that you have that template.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and like with so you said something a minute ago when you said I went through a bunch of different modalities that were spiritual.
Mm,
Uh, there seems to be a connection. Like if I look at
mm,
the internet is kind of physical or non-physical.
right.
My wife says it's the highest manifestation of the ethers
Mm,
in this plane. So there is this element, like the voice. There's an
yeah,
invisibility to it, yet but when I go back to that meaning, it really
mm,
jumped out at me because I thought, yeah. So is it spiritual or is it
yeah.
science? Is it science?
Well, I'd say it's both.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm coming at this from a science-based, nervous system, flesh and blood organs, point of view, but I'm also coming at it from a spiritual point of view because that was my foundation.
Yeah.
So in my, opinion, we are electrical beings. We are, our interface, our nervous system is kind of the bridge between our electrical nature and our fleshy nature because it is literally a fleshy pathway that electricity travels on and in. Right, so it's in the endocrine system, have correlations to the chakras.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, yeah, that we are fundamentally electrical, spiritual beings, and the nervous system, that's our interface between the spirit, the soul, the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, how does this modality, how does it work? I mean,
Yeah.
do you is it strictly, I guess fundamentally, is it focused on the nervous system? Like if
Well,
you, in other words, if you,
yeah.
let's just say, I'll make up words because I'm just stabbing at the dark here. But like um, if you treat it, if you balance it, if you align the nervous system, however you want to put it, does it then ripple out into the rest of the body, the organs, and all the different?
Yeah. So that's the thing is the autonomic nervous system, which is the level we're fundamentally working at, is connected not only to our survival energies. That's why, and we can get into that, like how trauma gets formed. It's from stuck survival energy, the fight, flight, freeze responses. Those are autonomic nervous system processes. The autonomic nervous system also governs our digestion, our heart rate variability, our immune function, what parts of the brain we have access to. If we're in a very sympathetic or fight flight state, we're going to be more in our limbic brain and our brainstem, not have as much access to the neocortex. So the autonomic nervous system is, I would call, sort of the underlying neurophysiological platform that supports everything else, which is why it's so fundamental to work at that level. But what it looks like is very interesting because it's not like, I have a operating table where someone comes and I like adjust their nervous system, right? It's done relationally because, what the guy, Peter, who first started developing this work, what he found, what the question he asked is, how come animals in the wild don't become traumatized? They're getting chased, nearly eaten, They experience life threat, but they don't experience trauma. They don't exhibit signs of trauma. So we're mammals. What happened? Like what happened with the civilization, with the process of industrialization, with societal norms, etc., all the toxicity we live with in many ways? What has happened to us such that we now are storing this energy and becoming traumatized? Why aren't we able to release these survival charges? So that's what he started asking. And when you get into the implementation of the work, it's about recognizing that it comes down to safety, fundamentally, safety and attunement. Because a mammal, like if you think about a gazelle or something, if it gets, trapped by a lion, if it gets tackled and it goes into freeze because it's getting ready to die, that's our autonomic nervous system coming on. And then say the lion gets distracted and the gazelle gets away. Once the gazelle gets to safety, it will shake out all that stress. Its body will tremble and it'll release the electrical charge of that fight flight, but only once it gets to safety. So the autonomic nervous system can't come down from survival if it's not feeling safe. So that's the foundation if I'm working with my clients, is how can I best facilitate safety for this person? Because their body knows what to do. That's the fundamental foundation, is that we know that your body knows how to heal. It knows how to let go of this stuff. But we need to provide the container, which is safe. And that safety comes through what we call attunement, which is feeling into the person. And the people who are really good at this work, it's not just with your eyes, because you can see in a person signs of threat. You can see hyperarousal, or you can see depression. You can see the different manifestations of the trauma. But it's really about feeling. When I'm with my clients, I'm feeling what's happening inside them. I'm feeling what's going on in their body. And that is the kind of attunement that, like a mother has with her child. It's the same kind of thing. And it provides this safety. The other person feels that. They sense that attunement, and their body starts to do what it needs to do. So it's complicated.
No, I think that's for one thing, you're attuned to that.
Right.
So
exactly.
A lot of energy practitioners come on here and they say, if I ask them, how does that go down? They'll say that they'll open up their energy field totally 100% and invite the client to do the same. So they have this attunement. They have this relationship of support, and like you said, safety.
Safety. So
safe environment. Yeah. So it sounds like, it is a mixture. It's spirit science.
It absolutely. My wife's business is called Scientuitive.
There you go.
And that's it in a nutshell. It's science, it's intuition.
Now, how does the client? So is the attunement done just being in that space?
Yeah, and I'm not saying to the client, I'm now attuning to you. It's just from the moment they walk in the door.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I'm just.
But are they telling you a story? Are they saying, I've got this problem, I want to achieve this, and you're just having on the surface, you're having a conversation, but the intuition is fully engaged, telepathy, and that speak.
That's right. That's right. The body speak. Because you can do this work invisibly. You can do this work just being in conversation with someone, and at the same time, I'm feeling. So there's two conversations, right? There's the one going on with the words, and then there's one going on with the body.
Yeah.
And what we like to do is bring those things together.
Yeah.
And that's, people may be telling their story or what happened to them, and I may pause them and say, I just noticed, as you say that, do you notice how your left shoulder just went up a little ways? Can you feel that from the inside?
Isn't that amazing? You'll go through a period of, I think the last one I had was my neck.
Yeah.
Now I'm doing, whatever, 15 shows in a week. I'm in the same position.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem. Everything's okay. And then next week, all of a sudden it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, what is that? What is that story? What is stored there? You start to go in. There's a couple of questions. One of them is, I think, for sure right up your alley. I'm not sure about this one. They're asking, do you work with the pineal gland?
Oh, well, I mean, not, and I have worked directly with the pineal gland with clients. There's a whole branch of this work that involves touch,
Yeah.
where we work on a table. So in that respect, absolutely. But we're always working with the whole system. And when, like I said, when you're working with the nervous system, you're working with endocrine system, right? Which the pineal gland is part of. So yeah, you're working with everything simultaneously.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, I also have worked specifically with the pineal gland in the touch work.
Here's another one. I know this is a good question.
Mm.
What are some ways you encourage your clients to create safety for themselves, even if their environment does not currently reflect that?
It's a really great question. I actually wrote a whole article about that over on my blog. It's called "Sometimes You Have to Break Up with Your Family," and it's not just family; it's all relationships. But you know, if someone is not in a safe environment, there's starting with that, there's some things you can do, such as developing your boundaries. That's very important, both physical and energetic. Like, say someone's living in a house, you know, with mom and dad are part of the reason that they got traumatized. Well, then it's going to be very important, if they can't get out of it, to have strong boundaries. You know, put a lock on your bedroom door. Make sure you have a space that is yours, that is sacred, that is, like, you know, no one is allowed in unless you let them. Practice your energetic boundaries, feeling your sphere and how you can channel your energy into that. Doing work that we call healthy aggression work, which is channeling the energy of anger in very physical, life-giving ways, supports that process of establishing boundaries really well. So that's if you're living in an unsafe situation and you can't get out. Doing those types of things are really important. The most important thing is to get out. I mean, we want our clients to find living situations that are safe. We need them to find relationships that are safe. So, you know, sometimes it means ending toxic relationships. It means sometimes, you know, putting up boundaries with your family, saying, you know, don't call me, I'll call you, that kind of stuff. It's almost without variable. Every client I have, as they heal, their relationships shift, because those relationships were formed in the toxic stew of the unresolved trauma. So there's all sorts of stuff that goes along with that, especially with family not wanting them to change, etc. So get out of those toxic relationships, get out of those toxic living situations. And if you can't for now, then it's about boundaries, strong boundaries, and channeling your energy to support that.
And so, okay, a lot of the modalities, I would just use the term energy practitioner, because you're working with, there is, part of it is it part of it or all of it? Is an avenue of self-discovery. What are my blind spots? What am I unconscious of?
Yeah.
You know, I'm unconscious. I've got some unconscious programming that this is the reason I have a bum knee, or whatever the case is, whatever that's stored in the somatic memory is stored. Does this method bring some of that in? In other words, do people come in and say, "Oh, I didn't realize I was such an asshole," or, you know, whatever the case is? You know what I mean? Like, they go, "Oh, aha, eureka! Oh, it's not them; it's been me the whole time." You know, self-empowerment. You know, self-discovery. Does it facilitate that?
Absolutely, man. At the deepest level. When what's amazing about this is, you know, we're working with the body, and lots of times we're working with somatic memories that are not cognitive. Like, they'll be, and there's a reason the mind protects people from the memories of trauma cognitively, because it's overwhelming. But as we're working with the body, we'll get into the body and we'll allow the body to do what it needs to do. You know, say, and like you said, you know, maybe my shoulder has been stuck, until we find that, oh, the arm wants to do this motion, and as it's doing this motion, oh, the memory comes back of that ball that I didn't catch that one time, and then it hit me in the head, right? So the cognitive processes reveal themselves, the cognitive memories reveal themselves as the trauma is worked through the body, and that in turn informs the self and the awareness of self. So it may ripple out to personality, like, oh my gosh, like I'm so defensive because I never realized that I'm holding my diaphragm in all the time.
Yeah.
It gives me this feeling of perpetual worry, right? And so I'm an asshole to people because I feel worried all the time, and it's because the diaphragm is stuck, right? So the layers and the way that it ripples out is truly profound.
And so, like, and then in regard to, like, I'm just trying to, like, get a picture of it in my head. So, is there, for instance, a lot of people talk about breathing. Is breath brought into, I don't know, what would you call it? Because to me, if I think about that meme, the electric, what do you call it? The nervous system.
Nervous system, yeah.
To me, it's just like lit, like a Christmas tree all the time. If I look at it, I realize that it has changes in color. I'm just trying to describe it metaphorically, but there's always something happening. It's always moving. Is there a way to balance it? I mean, is there a way to, like, approach it that way?
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple different pieces there to unpack, so I'll do them separately. So one is balancing the nervous system, and then I'll address breath, if that's all right. So when someone is living with trauma, what we say is that their nervous system is dysregulated. So that means that those survival processes are on more than they need to be. And when we see, in most cases, is that there's a sympathetic charge, which is your fight-flight system, your sympathetic nervous system. And there's also usually a freeze response involved, which is what keeps all of the energy at bay. It's like a lid that it numbs us to the fact that we're so stressed out internally. So it lets us go on about our day. We call that functional freeze because it's like this nice handy lid that keeps all that big charge away from our awareness. Until, of course, something happens. We get in a car accident, we get sick, right? We have a bad breakup, and then everything gets flooded because the lid gets popped off, right? So that's nervous system dysregulation. The gas is on and the brake is on. Right. And the motor is slowly getting worn out by these conflicting energies going at cross purposes. Yeah. So that's the unbalance you're talking about. And as we do this work, we restore regulation. That's what it's all about, is allowing those sympathetic processes to come to completion, allowing that big freeze response to lift so that the system starts flowing and working in congruence. So there's no one thing that does that. That's what happens as a result of consistent work over time and application. And because, again, like, this work isn't something that someone comes into my office and I fix them. This is about helping people understand a different way of living and relating to
lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle change, fundamental, right?
Are there? I know you still have the other answer.
Sure.
But are there? Do you see physical, physical consequences of this lifestyle? Every
autoimmune disorder is, in our opinion, the result of unresolved trauma and nervous system dysregulation. Cancer, most cancers. I mean, in my opinion, most disease, other than those that are like purely a genetic, something that's got messed up in the genetics early on, most genetic expressions of disease, in our opinion, are facilitated by a dysregulated nervous system. Because if we look at epigenetics, what it shows us is that our template isn't set. We come in with genetic potentials in either direction, either positive or maladaptive. And if our environment sucks and we're always under stress and our family system sucks and we're in a war zone, whatever it is, it's going to encourage the expression of those maladaptive tendencies. And we get the various conditions and diseases. But you can switch that at any time by bringing in that safety, the attunement, the trauma work, and you start to do what we call turn on the healing DNA. We start turning on the positive genetic expressions that are in our potential. So yes, absolutely, all sorts of physical ailments I see and treat and see people get better from.
And you mentioned that you've had a daily practice of meditation for 25 years.
Yeah.
Is that something that is in your program, in that lifestyle?
For me, it helps facilitate, the work I do with my clients, but I don't bring it in specifically.
Yeah.
I did Vipassana meditation did a 10-day silent retreat when I was 23, 22, and been doing it ever since, because it was like, oh, yep, I've done that before, and I'll be doing that now for the rest of my life. So yeah, that's Vipassana is essentially just about being in touch with the body, using being in awareness with the body as a primary interface rather than the thoughts. So it goes hand in hand with doing this work, but I don't necessarily promote it, because here's the thing: meditation can be quite harmful or overwhelming for people with a trauma history. There's a reason that they're not feeling what's happening in their body. And so if you start encouraging someone with a lot of trauma to go into a practice like Vipassana, it can get boom, they can just get flooded, right? And then have, some really bad results. So
it's like going into a sweat lodge.
Exactly, man.
Going to Sedona.
Right, yeah.
Somebody asked a tough question here. I don't know if it's threw me off a little bit. How do you navigate suicidal clients? Do you ever have that?
I don't generally have suicidal clients. My client, in order to do somatic work, you need to be stable enough that you're not going into psychosis or suicidal ideation.
Because your stuff's going to come up.
Yeah, your stuff's, and that's the whole point, is your stuff's going to come up, and we're going to work with it. But yeah, if someone is suicidal, that's more in the realm of someone like a counselor, a psychologist, a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
They need to get some resourcing and stability around their mind first before they can do the body work.
Yeah, it's I think that's why there's so many modalities. I think that's part of the reason. Yeah, is because it brings up a lot of stuff. It's inner work or shadow work is not a
picnic.
Fluffy love and light thing.
No. Yeah. I never addressed the breath thing, which is actually important. Because there are a lot of modalities that have people control their breath in different ways. And what we view this as is as a resource. You're not going to resolve your trauma by controlling your breath or doing ice baths a la Wim Hof, that kind of stuff. That is a form of resource for people to help them feel better. But it's not going to actually heal anything, because you have to be able to experience your breath as it is in order to resolve this stuff. And when you're in, say, I'm working with someone and their fight-flight charge is coming up, well, their breath is going to start being shallow and rapid. And if they go into a management pattern, like I'm now going to go into the 4-count breath pattern or something, that's just going to totally distract, and they're going to get away from the charge that was coming up to be healed. So again, safety, right? We have to develop the education and give them tools to understand that when they're in this charge and their breath is getting all shallow and rapid, there's nothing to be scared of. It's about feeling the experience of fear without being afraid of it. And that means allowing the breath to do what it needs to do. Conversely, if someone is really in freeze, really feeling their shutdown, their breath may be almost non-existent. And in that case, it might be like, hey, do you notice that you're still breathing?
Yeah.
But that's about the extent of an intervention I'm going to make with someone's breath, because it's all about allowing it to be as it is.
Yeah.
So breath work can be useful for resource, for management, for sort of managing symptoms. Once one is regulated, the breath can be a powerful tool for working with one's energy. For sure, the breath and the spirit go hand in hand, and so you can use that to cultivate a lot of good spiritual stuff. I just wouldn't advise it until after the nervous system is more regulated and the trauma is resolved.
So I was thinking of this question. My friend Jake just came up with a question. How does the food you ingest affect the nervous system? And do you offer any diet suggestions, supplementals, that type of thing?
Gotcha. We don't, because it's so individual.
Yeah.
In general, we want people to eat a healthy diet. But the thing is, take someone who's been eating McDonald's every day for, a long time, and you put them on a healthy diet, their system's going to freak out, and it's going to be overwhelming, and they're going to go into a massive detox response, which may or may not be helpful for the trauma healing process, right? So we don't make any suggestions about diet or supplements. We recognize that, we want people to be eating healthily, eating, good organic live food if possible. And the work we do generally facilitates movement in that direction. Like as someone resolves their trauma and gets healthier, they will organically move towards a better lifestyle in all ways. So
yeah, that's where I was going to go with it. Like, so in addition to that, do you see like a evidence or of the effect of their practice, their lifestyle, in terms of enhanced skills and abilities and higher sensitivities?
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, first we just want to help their problematic symptoms resolve. No more depression and no more anxiety, no more fibromyalgia, no more chronic fatigue, all that kind of stuff. And that's what we're starting with, is getting them back to a baseline. But along with that, you said something earlier, shadow work. This is very much, this is the essence of shadow work, working with one's trauma. And so much of us gets wrapped into this personality that is fundamentally a reaction to our trauma that starts really, really young. Right? So a lot of us, as we do this work of healing trauma, we realize we don't even know who we are. Pretty much every client I've had gets to a point where they're like, I don't know who I am anymore, because my personality was formed as a response to this trauma. And now I don't have the trauma. Like, who am I without that?
Exactly.
And that's when we start to see the deeper underlying sense of purpose emerge, where someone realizes what they're here on this planet to do. And they start to develop the ability to do that. They start to be who they are meant to be as they get out from under the lid of all of that crap, right?
Fascinating. Yeah, because that's what happens.
That's what happens.
That's what happens when you're doing the work.
You're
standing there going, "Who the hell am I?"
Yeah, first you don't know who you are, and then you discover who you are.
Yeah,
it's a nice way to. Yeah.
Wow, very fascinating. Very fascinating. No wonder Fiona's so passionate about it.
Oh, it's amazing stuff, And I was talking with Irene this morning. We were talking about, because we value all sorts of approaches. Like, we have essential oils we use, and we have, I see there's a massage therapist. I see, like, there's all sorts of things that are good. Without the nervous system work, though, if we have been traumatized, which, by the way, pretty much everybody in industrialized society has been. Sorry,
everybody on the face of the earth.
You're on Earth living. If you're not living in a remote tribal setting in the Amazon, you've likely been traumatized. So, welcome to Earth. But everyone's had it, and if we don't resolve that first, all the other good stuff isn't as good. Right. But if we do bring in the nervous system work and the trauma work, everything else works better. Yeah. So it's really what we view as the foundation for healing, although there are so many other good supportive things too.
Well, I'm looking at the nuts and bolts of this thing, and from an energetic perspective, I can see where, like for instance, like my wife's modality. It's energetically, they look very similar. On the surface, they have notable differences, and other modalities and techniques I've seen out there. But I wonder too, like in this case, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier. I think you may have already answered this. You said that before you start this work, you need to be at a certain level of balance, for lack of a better description. But do you have situations where, let's say I come in and, I sit down with you, and the next thing I know, I'm having recall of being raped as a 3-year-old, and I didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
And A, does that happen? And B, how do you approach that? Something like that.
Yeah, it does happen. Not very often, because usually at this point, I've done it enough that I can feel what's happened in somebody, even if they don't know. Like I'll feel it. Like I can feel the vibe of what early sexual rape, is, and molestation. It's got a certain energetic tag that I can sense. So now that I've done it enough, I can generally steer the process enough that that kind of awakening is gradual enough and supported with enough education and tools that it's not overwhelming.
Yeah.
But that being said, sometimes it just happens. There's nothing
Yeah.
you can do about it. Sometimes just someone feels into something and boom, just like the lid pops off and there it is.
Well,
And
I never thought about it till you said it, in regard to don't go there until
mhm,
you're at a certain space, because and that could even be to me. I mean, I would think that would even apply. Well, it's a broad category with a lot of different, like you said, a lot of different processes. But like,
mhm.
if you really think about it, you might want to be careful. Uh, as a practitioner. I mean,
Yes.
I've never thought about it. Like,
Yeah, no, you don't go straight to where the worst stuff is, right?
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
someone comes in and I notice that their chest is very braced and like there's very little movement there. I'm not gonna guide them into their chest and their breath and to invite them to fill up their lungs. It's like that's the last place we're gonna go because that's where they're holding so much. Right? So you support the edges around it. That's that process we call titration, which is taken from organic chemistry, which means a drop at a time until a change occurs. That's where we're working. We're working at the edges.
yeah.
Where we're,
Yeah, that's a good way to go with this
yeah,
stuff. How do you eat the elephant one bite at a time? Just
yeah, yeah.
be steady and deliberate. Maureen McIntyre asks, "What about past life traumas? Does that ever
Mm.
come up?"
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, actually, you go over at some point to my wife's YouTube channel. She
Mhm.
just released a video with her colleague on specifically on past life trauma. And it's really great talk. Yeah, we see that. I've processed that myself, my own past life traumas. It comes up for clients. Usually, it's like it happens where they'll be feeling into something, and then these images will start coming that they have no context for. That feels like not them or not from this life, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe we're into some past life things right here, and but it doesn't make any difference. The body, you work with the body in the same way. The nervous system doesn't distinguish between past life trauma, this life trauma. Its responses are all the same. Just like it doesn't really distinguish between, I mean, being blown up in a war versus being yelled at for 10 years by your dad. Like, it's the effect is slightly different, but they both cause PTSD in the same way.
Yeah,
Um,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
Yeah, I remember hearing my reawakening. I remember hearing everybody's pain is the same, just proportionate to their life experience.
yeah,
The
absolutely.
energetics, yeah, energetically, it's the same. It's the same thing, even
Yeah,
though on the surface it doesn't always look the same. It can and look totally different. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and that's why the nervous system is so foundational because those survival responses that live there, they don't distinguish. They just know threat or no threat.
and
Right?
so this is really interesting too, because even though you're looking at the science of it, right?
Mm.
There's a science. There's a huge, much more than most of the modalities that I've
Oh yeah.
been, that have been in front of me. But at the same time, your key, it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your key is that feeling.
You got
Is
it. You got it.
and I'm sure a lot of that's come with repetition, and you become your skills have become more and more acute. But
Mhm.
still, stepping into that arena, I guess, as a potential practitioner, if somebody was saying, "Hey, I want to do this," there has to be, I would imagine, a certain level of spiritual confidence in
Yeah,
their ability to intuit.
you got it, man. That's why a lot of people go through the somatic experiencing training, and not everybody gets it. A lot of them aren't able to get out of their head and into that felt sense, intuition sort of approach. And largely, I mean, many people who go through the training already have been, trained highly as psychologists and psychiatrists, and they just have that mental lens, and it can be difficult to shift out of. But it's usually the body workers. But I don't want to say that like that's always the case. There's definitely attuned, wonderful psychologists, psychotherapists out there, of course. But oftentimes, what I've seen is that the people who have a more body-based background can drop into that way of working. And it's the thing that you can't teach. Like you can teach someone the visual cues of different kinds of nervous system states, but to really do the work, you have to feel it. You have to be able to feel your client, which means you have to be able to feel yourself, which means you have to work on your own stuff, right? And when we say you can only take a client to a level of regulation that you yourself have achieved, because your nervous system is the template for their nervous system. So it's essential for practitioners of this work to.
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, this is thought provoking. So, like when you just said that last sentence, I thought to myself, so that your nervous system, they're walking in the door, you're in a certain state,
Right.
and we're talking nervous systems. Their nervous system, essentially, I think this is what you're saying. For a start, their nervous system is receptive to yours. In other words,
That's right.
it's picking up on the vibration like a tuning fork.
That's right.
And if you're fine-tuned, then it's going to at least head up that direction, And then, but so really, I mean, that's like a fundamental, not even just client-patient, practitioner-client, but like that's like something to like be conscious of just in your day-to-day, moment-by-moment interactions, isn't it?
Sure is, man. Sure is. Yeah, I mean, there's so much value in daily interactions. A few minutes with the barista, or the checkout person. It's, simple human kindness is so powerful. And when we resolve our trauma and we become regulated, it's, you just become one of those people that like people can't explain why, but I just feel safe around him, right? Or like that, she just makes me feel good. And it's often because, our nervous system is regulated and the nervous systems are always talking to each other. The fascia is always talking to each other, right? Our bodies are always in communication at that level, even at the quantum level. So it's, as one is regulated and you're bringing that into the world in a very literal way. And which is why I believe that trauma healing must be the foundation for all ascension processes, because without that, we're just kind of floating around. And we need this grounded, regulated goodness at a very bodily, fleshy level in order to have maximum access to our spiritual abilities, in my opinion. So
no, I agree. I think it's the traumas are the what's shrouding the soul, basically.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, man.
It's your impression of who you are that you're not.
That's a great way to say it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like what you said earlier. Like you lose, you lose these personality traits that were built on these traumas and these as a result of the traumas, the belief system you had of yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that, and I can resonate with that, and I know a lot of people can, which is you clear something, but it's like, I cleared it, and then you turn around and look like, that part of me is no longer here.
Yeah,
I can't use that anymore. Like, what do I do now?
Yep. And that's the beautiful part, man. I love it. I love it when clients get to that place where they have no idea who they are and how to behave. It's like, all right, now you get to discover.
Yeah, it's a gift. It's a gift. It really is. It really is. I worked with my wife early on, and the first 3 or 4 weeks, and I remember getting to a point, and I told her, and I was working 6-8 hours a day doing this modality.
Wow.
And I remember getting to the point going, I don't know who I am anymore. Yeah. Like, what's left? She was like, you don't know what to do. I said, no, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know who I am.
Yep.
It's like even if I went to go do some soulogy stuff, which had already been in, 4 or 5 years, and it was part of my natural flow every day, I would be going, okay, why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. Do I need to share it to 10 groups? I mean, all these things got changed. And that's one example. I just understood, like, why are you sharing to all these people? Well, strategically, that might sound like a good idea, but what's underneath that rock?
Mm-hmm.
it was my own false personality traits,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
trauma, like such as being accepted, or being an alpha male and being wanting to be competitive and be the winner,
Yeah.
and so you start looking at all this stuff, and yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's very raw. It's like a butterfly coming out of a cocoon. The wings are still wet.
Mm. Yeah.
It's that place of vulnerability. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hey, man.
Fascinating.
Again, well, and again, that's safety, man. That's what it comes down to, safety.
Hmm.
How to have
Yeah.
a safe container for that butterfly. Yeah.
I had this. I mentioned this I was just on a guy's show, a friend of mine, and I had this thing. My wife and I are like y'all, like you and your, and so it's a constant. We're constantly talking shop. I guess you can put
Yeah.
it that way.
So, yeah.
But so I was like, we were talking about some of the stuff we were experiencing, and I was like, so being totally vulnerable, but also being totally uninhibited. Like, how do I
Mm.
marry those two things? Like, to me,
Hmm.
that just spells like, or speaks to total relaxation, like total fluidity, and
Flow.
I
Yeah.
think something like this, because it's detectable.
Mm.
Like it's a lifestyle, and the what progress is very detectable,
Yeah.
and yeah, I can see that. Uh, Maureen asked another question: do you incorporate soul retrieval work into any healing from trauma?
Mm. Yes. So, very interesting question. Peter Levine, his background before he developed this work, he was into shamanism and all sorts of that kind of stuff. So it is very much related. I myself was studied and practiced shamanism starting, I don't know, 15, 16 years ago. That was a big foundation of my personal work, until I found this. So when you talk about soul retrieval, yes, the only difference is in this work, we teach the person how to be their own shaman and reclaim their own soul. It's
That's
not,
correct.
which is way more empowering than traditional shamanism, in my
Absolutely,
opinion.
absolutely, and I think that's a characteristic. That self empowerment is a characteristic of the new. I don't know what you want to call
Yeah,
them, the new healers, or
yeah,
that that whole. And
yeah.
I'm not throwing rocks at anything or anyone, but the old student teacher yogi guru thing.
That's over.
I think it's no longer
Yeah,
serving as we move out of this duality.
yeah.
And so a lot of the practitioners that I've talked to in 2,200 shows, that there was, like, I watched it. There was like a transition, and I think
Uh,
it was about this time last year when I started to notice it,
yeah.
and it was people saying, I only see a client two, maybe three times,
Hmm.
because I guess theirs would be less of a lifestyle,
Yeah,
uh, potential than like what you do,
yeah.
and then I would see where their processes were getting modified.
Hmm.
Like they had a certain way they did stuff, and then in January, February, March, and they were like, oh, like that modality I threw away. This one
Hmm.
I remixed. This and it almost like it became one of the common things they would say. I don't know if you can relate to this. Would be every one of them's different.
Yeah.
Somebody walks in, that's when I know, and it goes back to the intuition and feeling that you utilize.
Yep. Yep. No, I mean but to really, really be doing this work, like you need to be able to tell within a half a second someone walking in your door what needs to happen for them. That
Yeah,
doesn't mean you know exactly how you're going to get there, but okay, yeah, you just feel like what needs to happen in their system. It's very individual. And that's what's really fascinating about this work is, I mean, our nervous systems are all the same. Barring some weird neurological issue, our nervous systems are all the same. They all respond in the same way. And yet, the way that people become traumatized and the way that they need to unpack that is completely individual. You
yeah,
cannot do any form of cookie cutter anything. Like,
yeah, yeah.
it's so varied. Like, so, yeah, absolutely. With myself, I usually see clients more like I've had maybe one simple case of shock trauma, which takes a few months. That's pretty easy. Like someone who
Yeah.
had good regulation, good attachment growing up, healthy family system, they got in a car wreck, and they
Yeah.
just had some shock trauma. That was like 2 or 3 months, really easy.
Yeah.
Most clients, most people, it's way more complex because of our toxic society, because of the demands of our current lifestyle. It keeps people in chronic stress. Chronically stressed parents create chronically stressed kids. That's a lot more tricky to unravel because it's tied in with attachment and identity, like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So I normally see clients between a year, 3 years, 4 years, depends on how complex their system is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Far out, man. And on that last note too, that like there's a pretty, substantial school of thought that nobody gets out alive. That basically you're going to have to deal with your shifts, plural, at some point. Let go or be dragged. Now or later. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Have you seen a change in, the spirit of your clientele this
Mm-hmm.
year? This year, a lot of people talked about this year being very transformational, very catalytic. Uh,
Yep.
I mean, have you seen like any type of vibe in the collective representation of your clients?
Yeah. What I've noticed is that people who are doing the work are getting better faster.
Yeah,
There's so much positive energy available to people who are willing to embrace their own darkness, their own shadow, go into the shit. If
yeah,
you're open to doing that, there is so much grace available to you right now. Those who aren't are getting worse and worse, faster and faster. So
yeah,
I started seeing this trend happen about 2 years ago, is when I
yeah,
first noticed it picking up, and it's only accelerated since then.
yeah,
So yeah, my clients are doing better and better and better, which is amazing to see. Yeah,
yeah. That's a good synopsis. We're drinking the same Kool-Aid, no doubt about
yeah,
that.
yeah,
I'd love to continue collaborating. I think this is a very interesting subject.
yeah,
Obviously, people are, it's appealing to them, but I think it's certainly worthy. You, your wife, Peter, whoever, Fiona, we'll just maybe keep the ball rolling if you guys are open to it. How do people find you? Uh, is there a place that they can go, a website or
yeah,
whatever?
yeah. So yeah, you can find me. Just Google my name, Seth Lyon, SETHLYON. My website is just sethlyon.com. On there, I have a blog. I'm also a musician. That's how I started out. Actually, was as a musician. So I've gotten deeply into sound healing, and I've got a bunch of sound healing music on the website that I've
Uh,
done. My blog, lots of writings. Unfortunately, I can't take clients right now. My waiting list is already a year long, so I had to shut it down. So
high
right,
class problem. Good
yeah,
call. High
yeah,
class problem.
it's a
It's no
good
big
problem
deal.
to have. Yeah. But
Yeah.
so what I'm doing now is I'm suggesting people start with my wife's work. So check out Irene Lyon on YouTube. Check
Yeah.
out irenelyon.com. She has created online programs that let you, one, get the education, because this is something that is very important. Lots of somatic practitioners, even if they're good, won't give you the education. And
Yeah.
it's so important to understand what's happening inside you. Even
Yeah.
that can bring a lot of relief. So she's created a couple online programs. One is available all the time called the 21-Day Nervous System Tune-Up. Gives you the full comprehensive education and basic tools that you can start to do to become your own medicine, to, like we're talking about, become your own shaman, learn how to work with your body. Then there's a 12-week program we run once a year that's way more intensive. So I would recommend starting with the 21-day tune-up if someone wants to get into this work, because it gives you the foundation and also makes you way more informed about like what to look for in a practitioner. Because like I said, not all practitioners really understand how to do this work. Many do, a lot more don't. So I recommend getting a solid foundation under your belt first, and then you know more what to look for.
Right
Um,
on.
and one-on-one work is super important. It's part of our larger vision is creating a new training school. to create more practitioners that like really know how to do this. So that's in the works.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you the very best with that. I look forward to collaborating with you again down the road, and anyone that you're associated with. And yeah, all blessings to you and your partner and all your loved ones.
Oh, thank you so much, Todd. Yeah, many blessings, lots of love to you and yours, and yeah, really wonderful to connect with you, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it very much. Thank you. Peace out, everybody. We'll see
Bye, all.
see you tomorrow because I'm tired now.
Yeah.